In today's episode, I'm joined by Laurence Tremblay of Cacao Source, speaking from Guatemala. Despite the distance between Oregon and Guatemala and one brief internet hiccup, our conversation carries the full heart of cacao. We explore the roots of Cacao Source, the sacred role of the Mayan women's collectives, and how to work with cacao both in ceremony and daily life. Let this be a moment of remembrance and let the medicine speak. Welcome back to another episode of Love of One, Healing and Transformation. Today, I'm honored to have Laurence Tremblay. I really wanted to have Cacao Source on because I find their cacao absolutely beautiful. I can feel it differently in my heart space. It tastes more natural, more earthy, more of a connection with Pachamama and the cacao wisdom and energy of the heart center for me. I'm really honored to have Cacao Source, Miss Laurence, here today to talk to us about how they harvest it, how they work with the Mayan women's community, which I find so intriguing and beautiful. And then also, what are the differences between cacao in a ceremonial space versus in a culinary aspect? And how might we at home be able to utilize cacao as well? Laurence, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so honored and privileged to have you here to tell the story about Cacao Source and talk a little bit more about how others can use cacao in their daily practice or ceremonial ways.
Thank you so much for the invitation. That, as I mentioned before, that means a lot for us to have a voice to share the work we do.
Absolutely. I think it's good if we just dive right into the story about Cacao Source in particular, how you got started in that, and then we can go from there.
We were 3 co-founders, and we each have actually our story of how we end up meeting and how we end up working with cacao. But on my side, my passion was always with the social aspect of it. So I work in different NGOs and social projects across the world before I arrived in Guatemala. And I always got very passionate on creating models that were holistic. So there was always something missing. I was working with an NGO, and then we would use plastic cups. So, the environmental aspect wasn't necessarily touched. Or I would work with retreat centers, and then the social aspect was not really touched. So let's say we have that gorgeous community. We're doing all these amazing practice with the environment, doing permaculture, but then there's a separation with the local community in which we're living at. So there was always this link missing. And when I met Jordan and Dorothy that co-founded Cacao Source with me, they shared the dream. And they're like, Laurence, we want to connect cacao to the source, because they were more into the ceremonial aspect of it already. And they would go to certain ceremonies or events, and both of them, Dorothy is an ecologist and Jordan is, I don't know how to describe him, but he walked through a horse caravan through Mesoamerica for some years and had a chocolate shop on the Caribbean side of Guatemala. And so they were both very connected with the land, with the people, where the land came from. And they would ask, where is cacao from? Where's your cacao from? They would go through ritual, and oh my God, this is so amazing that there's that beautiful circle of sharing cacao and community. And that aspect is so incredible by itself, because it unites people. And this being said, when they were like, okay, but where's your cacao from? Because we want to connect with the farmers. And most people at that time, we're talking about 6-7 years ago, did not know where the cacao was from. So there was these spiritual gatherings, but with no connection to the farmers. So the idea was, how can we connect these worlds together? How can we include the farmers, the environment, the trees in the ceremonial process? And then when I connected with them, and it resonated so much with that aspect, and it kind of was that click for me of, wait, you can work, like by working with cacao, it's a bridge with the environmental. So my inner self is like a little environmental social activist, and it needs to be part of my work. And so cacao has this strong environmental potential of really facing it, working with it. And the same with the social aspect and the financial aspect and the community, holistic, spiritual lifestyle, So it's just really that checklist that it checked all of it. And I was like, wow, there's something here. There's something to work with here. So it was that, for all of us, it was that perfect synergy. We were very complementary. were very different. Most people never understood how we worked together because of how different we were. But that's really what made Cacao Source, was that inclusion of differences, of diversity. And then we were able to create a beautiful project, and so many people joined in. Cacao Source is so much more than just us three. It grew to a beautiful group, to all the farmers. We spoke about the Women's Collective as well. They're a very big pillar. And also all the distributors we have, because we work in Guatemala. We focus in Guatemala. So without our community that is international, we couldn't do the work we do either, because we would need to spread our focus. We would need to be in USA, in Europe, in Canada, and we would be so spread. But then, because there's such a big community around us, we're able to really focus on the work we do with farmers, with Women's Collective, with the production of the ceremonial block, of how to make them as delicious. It's so special. That block is so rich.
Yeah.
And, that pure ceremonial block. So really focusing on that production while we can collaborate for all the other work we want to do. And we're stronger this way.
It's beautiful. Yeah. I've been in and out of the corporate world for 20 plus years, and I find that the businesses that work the best are when they do have partners that have collective different aspects that they can bring to the table. It's almost like in my experience, you don't want the same people running the business. Like, you want that diversity, because it's kind of like the yin and the yang, with the polarity of it all. Now all of a sudden you're well-rounded in that aspect. I love that you found that. Not everybody gets to find that. So bravo.
And to keep it is also hard.
And yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Let's talk about the Women's Collective a little bit with the Mayan culture, because I really find that fascinating, how you weave that into your business, and also giving respect back to the land and the culture of where it started. Can you talk a little bit about how that got started as well?
Yeah. When we started Cacao Source, we started with nothing came with like a fortune, and we really had and the whole Cacao Source started with collaborations. And we always say we never had investments or debts or loans in Cacao. So it's not totally true, because the farmers invested in us and the Women's Collective invested in us. So the farmers borrowed us 100 per quintal of cacao. That bring back the abundance and believing in our project and in our vision. And the Women's Collective did the same. They believed in us. So they processed it first. And then we had the cacao blocks, and then we sold the cacao blocks, and we brought back the money to the farmers and the Women's Collective. And we did it this time with 200 pounds. And we grew really from scratch, but with the Women's Collective and with the farmers. And so we always say in Cacao Source, there's 4 pillars. There's the farmers, there's the Women's Collective, there's Cacao Source, the core leadership team, and there's the distributors, the international community. And without one of these pillars, the project just doesn't work. It's just not Cacao Source. So the Women's Collective is definitely one of these pillars. They have been processing the cacao since the start of the project. So the idea was, how can we create a model that creates abundance that can go back in the hands of people from Guatemala? How can we optimize that amount that goes back to the people? And so using machine is actually cheaper. So working with indigenous people, it's not like a way of, we're going to cut costs. No, it's the opposite. It increases the cost of our production, because machine is so easy and cheap. And that's why we use machine in nowadays for the processing of the cacao. But by including the Women's Collective, it's a way to first connect. So most of the Women's Collective, how we do is we work with a leader. We work with 7 different Women's Collective leaders. So women from the Cacao community that have a very strong personality. And they're leaders not because of Cacao Source. They're like powerhouse with or without us. They're participating in politics and like social activities, and they have a big space in their community. And then they're in charge of the whole process. From when we started, they were doing the roasting. Now they're still doing the roasting, but we have a new model. But they do the roasting, peeling, and grinding. So our grinding, we use low tech. We go with what's available around. We grind with the local corn grinder. Every village in Guatemala has a corn grinder because tortillas, corn is at the center of the culture. Initially, there was a corn grinder, put the cacao in, it create that face, and then it would be molded. And it needs to be like exactly 1 pound because this cacao grow internationally. So imagine you as someone in the US receiving a product, and we're so used to consistency. We're so used to have the exact perfect product in our hand that taste and look and is, that perfection, that machine making perfection. But it's all in the hand of Cacao Women's Collective. So that the leader is the responsible one to create that cacao block to the molding, and then it goes back to our production space. And within the peeling part, they have a team. So they work with different women, and I'd encourage always to work with single mothers or women that can't have necessarily a job, that can have a schedule, because in the peeling, they are their own boss. They are independent from Cacao Source. So the women's collective also can have they they don't work for us. They work for them, and then we collaborate. So they choose how much they work, where they work, when they work. They're responsible of they choose, So for that's a gift sometimes because you can't commit to a work schedule. So to have your economical independence is very challenging when you have 3, 4 kids around. So the peeling can be done with the kids. It has more flexibility.
I think that's why I find it so beautiful because I am also a single mother of 4 children, and I can see where in different cultures, they don't always have an option to do something at the home, right? Outside the United States, that just gets a little more challenging. I think that's another reason why I find it so beautiful that you're working with them in that aspect so that they can bring resources home as well while they're still taking care of their families. I love that. I want to talk a little bit about the cacao in itself. So there's lots of different types of cacao trees, correct? Is there like 3 different types of cacao? And maybe we could talk about that and then kind of move that into what's the difference between ceremonial purposes versus culinary purposes? Just so we can clear that for listeners, because I still get in my community, what is cacao? What's the difference? So I think it's a good place to weave into.
There's a lot more than 3 types of cacao, but there's 3
See?
main types of cacao. So, as humans, we like to generalize, put everything in one box. They've came up with 3 genetics. There's the Criollo, which in the world now, it's seen as the premium cacao, the one that has the most taste in the seeds. But the problem with it is small and sometimes a bit less resistance to certain challenges, pests and diseases. Then this Forastero usually comes from South America, and it's bigger pods with more seeds and more resistance. But the taste is not as delicious as Criollo. So then they created Trinitario, which is the mix of both. So they were like, how can we bring the taste and the quantity and resistance into one? And then they spread that cacao across the world. But this being said, there's a lot more genetic spectrum in the cacao. You can't just put one or the other. And now there's also cross-pollination. So that's in Guatemala. There's a lot of movement. There was a lot of support from NGOs, and they brought Trinitario in, but here was a line of Criollo. And by Criollo, we're putting it all in one genetic, but there's so many different types of cacao. But the Trinitario came in and was spread all around, and the NGOs or different projects would say to the local community, plant this cacao. So now there's also initiatives about seed banks of how can we preserve the ancestral seeds of cacao and how can we ensure we don't lose that. Also, because now there's cross-pollination, and it's most of Criollo cacao we see today are more acriolado. They're more in the spectrum of Criollo, but then it's not the same seeds that we used to have. And then there's so many other types, and now it's like popping out all over the world of different genetics in Southern America and Costa Rica, here in Guatemala and Mexico. So I wouldn't say 3. I would say, again, there's so much diversity, and we like to put them in 3 groups to have it or organized in our human mind. But I think it's nice to leave space to that diversity and also value the different types. Because again, we say one is better than the other, but actually they're just different. And we like, again, as human to say this genetic is better than that genetic. But no, it all has its qualities. And even though even if it's not valued in the chocolate world, it still has other value. So it really depends on why you intention it. And at the end of the day, you have your cacao in your hand and it doesn't really matter. Your cacao is delicious, so just enjoy it, not staying too much up there.
I still get the benefits of it.
Yeah. When it comes to your question, I think was more, okay, what difference a ceremonial cacao? We often will start by saying the intention, but what I would like to bring today is more to understand what, for us at least, and again, there's no right answer. I feel now more and more we're trying to put ceremonial cacao in a box. Like we, say like, that's a checklist to say that ceremonial cacao. And there's more and more gatekeeping, which I feel it's the opposite of what cacao should be about. Cacao should be about, it's there to be shared. It's love. So for us, cacao is a tool to ceremony. So a ceremonial cacao is different than a ceremony. A ceremonial cacao it's an ingredient for rituals. So it's a cacao used for rituals. It's a bit like tobacco. You have tobacco that is made, of course, it's like tobacco could be that ingredient, or it could be cigarette. And cigarette, you don't necessarily want to feed that to your fire because there's a lot of chemicals added to it. And the intention, there's something, it can be literally a poison or a medicine. And cacao can be poison or a medicine.
That's true.
So
the tobacco is, tobacco is like the rapé versus the cigarette, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot. Or just pure tobacco that we grow in your backyard. So in the process, when we work, we try to actually be diverse because ingredients to ceremonies, it's all about resonance. It's all how you feel as a person receiving this and what's your connection. We don't believe there's one cacao better out there. We don't think Cacao Source cacao is the best cacao in the world. It's the best for the moment, for the person who resonates it. And we have single origins. We believe every earth, the terroir, every land where it comes from will impact the energy and the first thing. Where does it come from? Is it a diverse ecosystem? Cacao is an extremely absorbent plant. It's absorbed. That's why also there's warnings about heavy metals, because if there's heavy metals in the land, the cacao absorbs it. So anything there's in the land, energetically also, it pulls it out the seed. So where it comes from, for us, we value agroforestry. We value a healthy ecosystem. We believe if it grows in a healthy ecosystems, it helps. Then when it comes in our body ecosystem, it's going to be also healthy. So where it comes from, and then what was the intention of making it? The process of it, was it made within machines or was it made within hands? And the ceremonial cacao that comes from machine. And if you resonate with it, why not? Supports your health, your own benefit, and you feel more connected. Why not? In our case, we really love what we resonate with is a cacao as artisanal. We try to find that balance of artisanal, but also, again, one of our mission is social and environmental justice. So how can we optimize that? Let's say we use a roasting machine. We use, as I mentioned, the corn grinding machine. It's transformed into a cacao grinding machine. Allows us to have more cacao processed, so the abundance of the river to be bigger and to have more people involved. So instead of using machines to have less people involved, we use machines to have more people involved. And that's only a moment where we use a machine over a human, is when we think it's going to allow us to involve more people. So there's very specific moments. And then it's, how do you share the cacao? Do you use it, use it on the go or consume it? It's what's the intention also when you're drinking it. Again, the ceremonial movement has so many, it's a new movement. It's like it comes from ancestral roots, but how it's being shared today is something new. How it always used to be shared, and it had its different ways. And chocolate for me is that there's actually a thing called chocolate. Doesn't mean exploitation. There's definitely exploitative chocolate. For us, against that. But there's really culinary. Where in your question, there's ceremonial cacao, there's culinary. The culinary for me is also, but actually you can use ceremonial cacao in culinary world if you want to make it. You can use the best cacao and it's going to change your full experience of chocolate or cacao. There's a whole branch that overlap over there, bringing more intention in the food. Because food is also, so there's separation necessarily, at least for us. But then the chocolate, when you add a lot of sugar or processing chemicals, and what you do for me, when you use lots of machine, that's kind of where the world's set. And often when we consume it, I think the empowerment of consumers is the most important. So we often put all of that responsibility into the people who does the cacao. I'll tell us that it's cacao for ceremonies, but I feel there is also a responsibility for the person who consumes of take a moment and feel if you resonate, trust what you feel inside of you. If that feels like a cacao that brings enrich your life or not. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why I resonate with the Cacao Source. I can feel energy from anything. And the energy that's in that cacao is so much different. I think you could just feel the love that's centered around it more so, that it feels more pure than anything. And I guess listening to how you have it processed and harvested, and it makes more sense to me now why I resonate with that. I feel that when I drink it. And everything I find is intention, right? So yes, using whatever intention it is for whatever that ceremony tool is key for sure. Speaking of intention and going into an actual ceremony with cacao as a tool, let's walk through if someone were going to experience cacao for the first time. Is there, and I know because I've been in so many different ceremonies throughout my experience of awakening, that everyone's journey is a little different, but is there some things that you could share with your experience of what people might experience when they sit in ceremony with intention with cacao? Is there a sensation in their body, in their connection to spirit, to their health, just to their embodiment, and that you find to be true amongst most people?
So there's different ways to connect with cacao. For us, we differentiate ceremonies from circles, from rituals. Cacao is again, we see it as an ingredient through the work happening. So when we say what do you get from cacao, it really depends who offers it, in what setting, and with what intention, because it's gonna just enhance whatever setting you're in. And there's so many beautiful types of setting you can drink cacao with. We live on Mayan land, so when I think about a ceremony, I think often about the Mayan fire ceremony, which is led by Nakir that we invite in, and they hold the space. And sometimes cacao is an ingredient in it, and sometimes it's not. So it really depends of the setting. When we have groups visiting us, we do circles. Sometimes we do ceremonies that we invite someone in who hold that space. And sometimes we just drink it in a circle that we hold that space ourselves. And we bring the intention of connecting, of uniting an intention for a week to spend together, of feeling into the energy of the day. Then we feel more, often it like expands our heart and we feel more connected, especially as a group. It's like, it enhances to it. Large. Yeah, it's that intention. It's very magical. I would say a lot of heart. It works a lot with the heart, scientifically as well, medicinal as well, but also it's a mirror to what's inside. Cacao, it's that mirror of allowance and self-reflection. So it depends also what you have inside. So there's no, as you mentioned a bit when you asked, there's not one specific answer. There's so many experience, but there's definitely a small correlation with your heart feel a bit more expanded. It allows more space for whatever work is happening, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And some people use it as a daily ritual, like I do. Is there some information or something you can share about using it as a daily ritual too, outside of ceremony in a circle?
Yeah. My favorite way personally to use it. I also love my cacao in the morning to start the day. For me, it's been a tool of presence, of just bringing gratefulness. It's like you just give thanks, just bring gratefulness in. Everything is a ceremony. If you have our package, it's always life is a ceremony. That's big part of the essence of Cacao Source. But first, you always want to give. Everything we do, if that is business, sitting in cacao, working with people, first you always want to give. And giving thanks is one of the best way to give to a bigger spirit. So first acknowledge what you have, give thanks, and then you can intentionalize something for the day. But that's how I personally love to connect with it for myself. Sometimes I include my loved ones around, my dear friends, and then there's something so special with it. This being said, again, overconsumption of anything, every medicine can become poison. So also the consumption of it needs to be mindful. I usually love to take one day off, one day without drinking cacao. There is heavy metals in cacao. It is a thing. The consumption of it, it's a medicine. It needs to be consumed as a medicine. If you overconsume any medicine in this world, it's not good for your body. So when
That's a good point.
when you consume the medicine of cacao, treating it as so and not overconsuming it is very important. So just being mindful also
Thank you
with
for sharing that.
dosage. If you drink it on a daily basis, you don't need that much. You already have cacao in your body, so you can take 50 grams, 20 grams. Sometimes we say a ceremonial dose is 40 grams, but that's not for daily use. That's like, when you go very deep with cacao. So for daily use, you can use less and mindful with the consumption.
Thank you for saying that, because I don't think people put that together, that it is a medicine and you wouldn't chug your pharmaceutical medicine because of the same reason. And that's the same thing with psilocybin, microdosing. You don't want to do too much all the time and give your body a break. I think that's true with all this stuff. So thank you for sharing that, because I don't think people put that together. They think, oh, it's like, I think some people that are aware and educated, that's why I love this episode, so we can educate. But they think, oh, chocolate, you can never have too much. Well, that's actually, it's not completely true.
Yeah.
What else would you like to share about something else that's very similar in nature about overconsumption? Is there something else that's really important that people that have never tried or just now venturing into cacao, seems to be an uptick these days about cacao ceremonies and going within, which is beautiful to see. I love seeing that and opening the heart. Is there anything else that you'd like to share to educate people about?
Maybe respect. I think, again, cacao has really deep roots in different indigenous groups. And that's also a very interesting one because, again, we're settled here. I live on Cacti land. Our office is on Cactical lands. Most of our workers are situated. So there's a lot of indigenous group. And when I say group, I mean nations. So one nation can't speak for all nations. And just bringing the respect back of where it came from, because there's a really deep history for these lands. But also cacao comes from South America. It comes from Costa Rica, used it as well, Mexico. So I think just understanding a bit of the path of where does cacao come from. And it was a challenge to keep the wisdom that came with cacao that now we consume. For the wisdom keeper, they put a lot of their lives at risk to safeguard that. So I think also being patient as consumers. It's a medicine from an indigenous group that now is interweaving. Now the space of indigenous is growing. And I feel a lot of the group are trying to pick up, because a lot of the wisdom was passed down the word of mouth because it couldn't be written. There was lots of risk with it. And now I feel a lot of it is trying to be grouped back together. And the interference of foreign influence can be very challenging to interweave this wisdom back. So I think for us as foreigners, it's a lot of patience of not allowing, because we have nothing to allow. It's theirs. Sometimes it's not our but just like how it's beautiful, like cacao can be shared. And when it comes to the wisdom of it, just having we're so used to have what we want at the moment we want it. That's called capitalism. We're mind trained for that. And I think just having this step back of patience and allowing and letting the wisdom build itself, and letting the wisdom keepers also have that space. And of course, everything is about sharing. Everything is about prosperity. And cacao wants to be shared, but sometimes it's just being like, okay, let's maybe find out what's the history of that medicine I connect so much with. How can I respect? And how can I give thanks back to it? And how can I make sure that if I create abundance and prosperity in my country, how can I make sure that the country where it's produced also have that same abundance and prosperity? That it doesn't just, again, stay in the hands of the few, but it also goes in the hand of where it comes from. So there's a lot of work to be done. And there's not like one good answer to give about that. I think it's a discussion. It's an ongoing discussion with diverse group of people of how can we make sure that we give the respect. So if you're just entering cacao and you're like, okay, how to develop that relationship? Cacao is, again, meant to be shared. It's amazing. You're connecting with cacao. There's so much to be shared there. And it's also, I want to go deeper into it. Just remember that there's a whole story behind it, and how can you give respect back? And how can you make sure you're not profiting out of a medicine of a group of people that are challenged and that they do this. So having that bridge connecting, I think, is extremely important. And we're still figuring it out with Cacao Source. We try to bring as many voices in our core team, leadership team. We have from the indigenous to foreigner groups coming together, and we always speak about it, because there's not one moment where we can say, check, we done it right. This is the formula. It's ongoing process. Yeah.
I love all of that. Respect and gratitude go hand in hand. I think it's very important that when you sit with cacao, that you thank her. You give gratitude to the farmers, to the land, to Pachamama, to all of them. And that's a simple thing anyone can do before they drink and sip their cacao on a daily basis or a ceremonial space.
To say, know the name of your farmers, know the name of your guardians. It's so simple, but we forgot about that. In our blocks, we have a scan code in the back, and it scans back to the origin. And the goal of that was like, if you sip cacao, say, thank you, Juan, thank you, Cheo. Know the name of who. Imagine like a farmer's whole life is around caring for the land. And then there's a heavy rain. And there's a challenge coming up. It's a very human work. It's humans, we forget that. Yeah. The fucking
very emotional.
I love that. Yeah, thanks. Always more. It's enough. Give more. Shut that.
There's never enough of thank you. It's just a simple thing that, which goes back to you saying and reminding us patience, right? So be patient with yourself, even when you sit with cacao. And being patient also includes taking the time to give gratitude, give thanks, to sit in your intention. That's part of the patience, I think, too, that people often forget in their busy life, down the hatch. But you may not get all the benefits from that, right?
Yeah.
How has cacao changed your life personally, Laurence?
It's very interesting.
So much, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I want to use that metaphor I don't know how, I don't know what it is, but I feel like I was kind of a lobster of not knowing what I was getting into, of the lobster you put in the water, and then at some point you just like, oh, I'm cooked. And it's kind of like the same thing. So when I started with cacao, I started for the social and environmental justice. I started because I wanted to work with the land. I wanted to work with agroforestry. And I wanted to make sure that it was giving back to the people. And that was like my mission. And then, of course, you drink cacao. And I remember the first time we shared cacao for over 200 people. And we're like preparing it and the whole day of cacao. Then we served cacao and drank it. And at the end of the night, my heart was so expanded. I was like, oh, wait, that actually works. And I actually started not even knowing it worked. I love the whole concept around it, but I hadn't had that connection yet with it. And then I was like, what, that works. And then we started giving after years. Now it's been Cacao Source, I have a 6-year journey now. We started offering trainings because we're in the world of cacao every single day. And we did a lot of network and collaboration and bridges with the communities, and let's share that. And within these trainings, 7 days, 9 days, drinking cacao every day with a group with intention every single time. And we do it 2-3 times a year. And every single time it shifts something. And you're holding space, but you feel all of that movement passing through you. And you're like, oh, work is happening. And it's such an interesting thing because it's that work is part of our work as well as part of our daily work. So it's like the inner work and the outer work is connected. It's because we work with cacao. And so every time it's a personal journey, and also we separate our work. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Happy my upside down, definitely. Yeah, my days. Now I have a small farm. I grow some cacao trees. I practice it. I'm a little drink, and my whole life with cacao. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was cacao. Awesome. And so I know you give training. Did you want to talk a little bit about that before we go?
Trainings are 1 week participative. Like you're part of our community. Kind of, because we don't believe in 1 week you can become a space holder. It's a life path. What we do is an introduction. It's a seed to start the life path. And our trainings, we have 2, 3, or even more now. There's so many angles to cacao, but our main one is the Cacao Source training program. And that one is that holistic view from experimental knowledge and medicine. So it's a very full on 1 week. But you get to visit 2 different farms. So we also invite wisdom keepers, because when it comes to the Mayan cosmovision, we believe it's not ours to share. Again, the Mayans have a voice. Yeah. We don't need to speak for them. They can speak for themselves. So we collaborate, and then we share more about history, about medicine, social business, sacred spaces. So we go really in that holistic approach. Ecology, very important. Like, what is the role of cacao in its ecosystem? There's so many synergies of how it works with our body. The cacao is a symbiotic plant. Anyway, if I start, I won't stop. There's so much to say about it. But it's a really beautiful training. A lot of the people who has joined their cacao, or a lot of them now drink it for themselves and share it with their mom and best friend as well. I think one of the key things we try to share in our trainings is to be in service to cacao does not necessarily means to hold space for circles. There's roles, and there's nahuales, and there's energies, and every role is as important. So there's so many ways to be in service to cacao. This being said, holding space is one of the ways, and it's as important as all the others. So that's also a way. But there's a lot of different ways. The trainings is really that exploration of cacao, understanding it, bringing the respect back to it. The jungle immersion is full on how can you just immerse yourself with the trees, with the farmer. We take boats in the Rio. Today we go on that. Then plant trees. How can we care for the trees, the people? So it's a more adventurous and immersive one. And we drink cacao every day, and we process from the seed to the cup on a daily basis. So really, and it's not easy. I don't know if you've ever tried. It's not, especially when you're not used to. So we go really from the roasting, peeling, grinding with the matate, to the cup, to the sharing in the circle on a daily basis, going to farmers. So it's very immersive, less in the mind. But the other one, sometimes you need that access, that understanding to then connect deeper. So both of them has a approach. We're also now offering production. So our local team created their own training where they share about the whole production of cacao, and it's led our local team for everyone. Some of them have learned English. Some of them will, it's a mix of Spanish and English, and it's understanding really the roasting, quality control, production. So someone who would want to start to make their own block. Again, Cacao Source, it's a model that is meant to be repeated. not to keep for ourselves. We want people to copy us. So how can we give trainings that people can learn to do what we do and do it better than us? So, and then we have online offerings and cohorts, and we're trying to create more and more accessibility and inclusivity in educational offerings.
I took some of your online stuff and it was very informational, and it made me dive in even deeper into my own knowledge of cacao. And I've sat with it in ceremony before, but then taking your trainings, I was like, oh, there's so much more there than just sipping it with intention and space. It's beautiful. So much information. And I know you have a website at sourcecacao.com.
Yeah.
And that you can also order your cacao online. Anyone who's listening, you can also go there to order your cacao blocks. And it does take a little time, but it's worth it because of the way that they process it. And it's so divine on every level, I believe. Is there any last thoughts that you want to give, Laurence? I really appreciate all of that wonderful information today.
I think on my side, that's it. I think the cacao speaks more than I do. And just enjoy a cup. Just go to nature, enjoy a cup, and it's gonna say more than whatever I could share now. Yeah.
Oh, love that. That's perfect. And it's true. So thank you very much. I'm so honored again, and enjoy your time in Guatemala and in all of your immersions of cacao. Everybody, you can get all the information of Cacao Source and their social handles and everything else in the description of this episode, as well as the outro of this episode. Thank you once again. That was my honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. And to learn more or order cacao, visit sourcecacao.com and follow at Cacao Source on Instagram. If this conversation moved you, please share, review, and keep spreading the love. Until next time, may you walk in gratitude and remember, you are the ceremony.